Everyone said the Indiana Fever had no chance. ESPN analysts wrote them off, odds makers laughed, and even the two-time champs Las Vegas Aces expected a sweep. But then, in front of the Aces home crowd, on the very night Wilson was crowned MVP, the Fever shocked the world by stealing Game 1. How did a team missing 6 players flip the entire series script with one win? And what did Caitlin Clark say to her teammates post-game that's got people turning heads? Stick around, because this wasn't just an upset. It was a statement. What happens when a team enters the playoffs with 6 players out, no analyst giving them a real chance, and the two-time champions waiting? You get the Indiana Fever's greatest test of belief, a night that was supposed to belong to someone else, and yet somehow turned into their moment. From the start, the series was framed as a mismatch. ESPN panels labeled it short and predictable. Sportsbooks had odds so lopsided it was easier to bet on how many points Las Vegas would win by than whether Indiana could win at all. Even the language around the pregame showed it. Headlines talked about survival, not victory. The Aces were expected to roll on their way to another finals, and the subtext was clear. If Indiana wanted to avoid humiliation, that alone would count as success. Then came the injury list. Caitlin Clark sidelined, Sophie Cunningham out, Sydney Colson, Chloe Bibby, Ari McDonald, Demira Stantis. 6 names gone. The Fever didn't look like a playoff squad. They looked like a team stuck together with tape. It wasn't just about being underdogs anymore. They were being called lucky to even be standing there, as if their season had already expired. Picture the scene in Las Vegas before tip-off. Championship banners hung high. The crowd set for celebration. And then came the centerpiece. Wilson being honored with her MVP trophy at center court. The announcement wasn't just about recognizing her brilliance. It symbolized the story everyone expected. Vegas as the powerhouse. Indiana as the background act. The Fever's players weren't just overlooked. They were invisible in their own semifinal debut. And yet, sports have a way of flipping the script when expectations are most rigid. Think back to underdog runs in history. Teams written off before a ball was tipped. Squads that weren't supposed to be on the same floor. You could feel the parallels brewing. This wasn't just the start of a playoff series. For Indiana, Game 1 stood as the chance to claim a seat at the table and announce they were here to fight. By the final buzzer, the entire narrative cracked. The spotlight on Wilson's MVP moment suddenly dimmed, because the Fever had stolen it. They walked out of Las Vegas with an 89-73 win. Their first semifinal victory in almost 10 years, and the entire basketball world staring in disbelief. But the real shock came not just from the team as a whole. It came from one player who turned the night into her own personal stage. While all eyes were locked on Wilson raising her MVP trophy, nobody expected Kelsey Mitchell to come in and completely flip the story. It was supposed to be Wilson's night, the defending champions taking care of business at home, the narrative already written before the ball even went up. But Mitchell refused to let Indiana be a footnote. She turned the semifinal opener into her own masterpiece, and by the time it was over, the conversation across the league had already shifted. Normal, I think. It's practice. Try to prepare like anybody else would, like any other day. Keep the main thing, so you could do. Kelsey Mitchell has always been respected as an elite scorer, but she's often mentioned as an afterthought behind bigger names in the WNBA. Coming into this series, the talk was about whether Wilson could continue her dominance, if Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray could overwhelm the Fever, or if Indiana could even stay on the floor. Very few people were talking about Mitchell as the player who could redefine the matchup. Yet just like she's done for much of her career, she answered in the best way possible, by letting her game speak louder than the expectations around her. I think the best thing I could have done was, I had a long list. I wrote down a list. A lot of times I could have quit, been a pro with Indiana Fever. I wrote down all the people, they wrote me off. I wrote it down on a list. I wrote down all the coaches that didn't want me around. I wrote down all the media outlets that didn't want to talk to me. I think that within itself is like, you gotta tell your younger self not to give up on you. Cause it's been a lot of times I could have given up when I know a lot of people that talk to me now weren't talking to me, and I know what it was like when it wasn't. So Mitchell didn't just score, she scored every way you can imagine. She hit mid-range pull-ups when defenders fought through screens. She drilled deep threes when the Aces left her a split second late. She hit every free throw, finishing a perfect 6 for 6 at the line. From inside, outside, and everywhere in between, she looked untouchable. By the final box score, she had piled up 34 points on 12 for 23 shooting from the field, 4 for 6 from beyond the arc, and that flawless mark at the line. It wasn't only efficient, it was relentless. That 34-point explosion wasn't just a big game, it was historic. No Fever player had scored over 30 points in a playoff game since 2012, and no one in WNBA history had ever dropped that many in their very first semifinal appearance. Mitchell's performance now sits alongside legends like Lauren Jackson and Cynthia Cooper, yet it goes one step further because she broke the record. Think about it. In her postseason debut at this level, against the champions, under the spotlight of an MVP celebration, she carved out her name in the record books. And even those watching from the sideline felt the weight of it. Caitlin Clark, sidelined by injury, had a simple but powerful reaction. Just 2 words sent out across social media. Kelsey unreal. No elaborate speech, no overthinking. Just respect from the sophomore phenom to the seasoned veteran who carried them when it mattered most. It showed how much Mitchell means to this team and how much her teammates recognize it. Even Aces head coach Becky Hammon, never one to hand out compliments cheaply, admitted post-game that they had no answer for Mitchell. That acknowledgement only underscored how much she took over every possession that night. It wasn't luck. It wasn't a fluke. It was Mitchell at her best, proving she belongs in every conversation about the league's most dangerous guards. The symbolism couldn't have been louder. On the same floor where Wilson was being crowned as the league's MVP, Mitchell was staking her own claim. It looked like she was saying, "We've got a most valuable player too, and she's wearing Fever red, blue, and yellow." A career night, yes. But more than that, her 34 points represented Indiana's defiance, their refusal to accept a supporting role in the story. The Fever didn't just win because of Mitchell's outburst, they found their identity through it. And that identity didn't end with one score. The real heartbeat of this upset came from across the roster, with defense, hustle, and depth combining to frustrate the champions from every angle. Everyone expected Las Vegas to own the paint, to bully the Fever inside with size, strength, and an MVP presence. But instead, Indiana made defense and tempo their weapon, flipping the game in the one area almost nobody thought they could win. What unfolded wasn't just resistance. It looked like a blueprint for how to break down the defending champions. The center of it all was Aaliyah Boston, and her assignment was one of the toughest you can imagine. Guard Ajawilson. Wilson had just been named MVP. She thrives in the post, she stretches defenders, she attacks relentlessly. Most players shrink when given that matchup. Boston didn't. From the very first possession, she focused on being disruptive rather than simply trying to match Wilson shot for shot. Her approach was simple: make Wilson uncomfortable. If she could push her off her sweet spots, contest every catch and force her to reset, Indiana could tilt the battle. It worked. Wilson still produced 16 points and 13 rebounds, numbers that on the surface look fine. But the story was her rhythm. She had to grind for every bucket, settling into shots that lacked her usual flow and often working late into the shot clock. That constant irritation slowed the Aces' offense, chipping away at the confidence of a team that usually thrives when Wilson dictates everything. Boston didn't erase the MVP, but she made her look human, and that alone is an achievement. Beyond Boston, Indiana needed its wings to step up. Lexi Hall drew Jackie Young, one of the toughest covers in the league. She shadowed her on cuts, fought through screens, and refused to bite on fakes. Young never found the space she usually relies on, and by the end her impact felt muted. Hall added even more by knocking down clutch threes when Indiana needed them, proving her effort wasn't only about stopping someone else but also inspiring her own offense. The Fever also had Odyssey Sims attacking with fire in every possession. She wasn't afraid to take the ball straight at Vegas defenders, splitting lanes and forcing the Aces into foul trouble. Her drives changed the tempo. Instead of Indiana playing slow and cautious, the pace sped up. Vegas, usually the team dictating tempo, suddenly looked the one scrambling to keep up. Sims had them reacting instead of controlling, and that shift fed into the Fever's defense getting set and locked in possession after possession. Brianna Turner didn't fill the box score, but her presence was unmistakable. She altered shots with length, walled up drivers, and made the paint a place the Aces couldn't just own. By the numbers, Indiana outscored Las Vegas 50-38 in the paint, flipping what had been a supposed disadvantage into one of their greatest strengths. When the game ended, even Aces coach Becky Hammon admitted what everyone could see. Indiana won the categories that mattered most: pace, defense, and urgency. That acknowledgement told the entire story. This was not luck or a one-off hot shooting night. This was a team establishing how they could compete, how they could frustrate, and how they could win again. Now the question becomes whether the Fever can use that same defensive map in Game 2 and keep the Aces from adjusting to it. One game down, but here's the tough reality. In a best-of-5, history shows 28% of teams who drop Game 1 still come back to win the series. The Aces know this, their fans know this, and they're preparing for Game 2 like it's life or death. For Indiana, this will be the most important 40 minutes of their season so far. Win again, and they go home up 2-0, with a chance to close it out in front of their own crowd. Lose, and the series resets, all that momentum suddenly gone. Yeah, I feel good. I mean, our group has seen it all. We wanted to come in and be the aggressor right away, to make sure that we were dictating on the defensive end, and we were dictating from a pace standpoint. They're champions for a reason. We knew that they were going to make runs. They made a big one in the third, and we responded with a big one. I'm proud of our team. It's one game, it's a long series, so we got to keep the main thing. But to come in here and to be able to steal this one was big for us. Championship teams respond to losses differently. The Aces have been here before. They faced early setbacks in past playoff runs and bounced right back by making adjustments quickly. That's their advantage. They know how to learn in hours what can take other teams weeks. They won't come out flat again. They will come out swinging. Ajawilson especially will be hunting for redemption. She doesn't like being held down, and you can bet Las Vegas will make it a priority to put her in strong scoring positions right away. Jackie Young, who struggled against Lexi Hull's smothering defense, will also look to get loose on cuts, screens, and early offense before the Fever defense is set. And Becky Hammon has now seen what worked for Indiana. That means her team will walk in with a different game plan. So the Fever have to answer one question. Can they handle being the team in control? This is new ground. Winning in the underdog role is one story. Following it up with another win when the opponent is throwing everything at you, that's a harder test. Can Kelsey Mitchell find that same shooting rhythm when the defense comes with traps and doubles? Can Aaliyah Boston keep Wilson uncomfortable for a second straight game? Or does Wilson break free? These aren't small challenges. We've got to keep the main thing, and that is us playing to a standard of basketball that we want to have as an Indiana Fever organization and franchise. We've got to keep our layers, the outside, the people in our building, and the people in our locker room. And the thing I'm just so proud of with this group is it doesn't matter who's on the floor, it doesn't matter who's on our roster. They give each other the freedom to be themselves. They empower one another to be themselves and to be the best version of themselves. And every time we've had a change, every time we've brought someone in, every time we've had rotational changes, they're for each other. They live the we over the me. And when you have that, it just gives you opportunities to do really special things. This is where the idea of a championship moment comes into play. When you're tested after success, do you fold or rise up again? If Indiana finds a way to grab Game 2, they don't just hold momentum. They turn themselves from upset artists into real contenders for the finals. This wasn't just a playoff win. It was Indiana reclaiming its belief and proving that we over me isn't just a slogan. It's their identity on the biggest stage. One fearless night after a decade of waiting showed exactly what this group can be. Coach Stephanie White reminded everyone, we take it one day at a time. We can't look too far in front of us because that's when you start to lose your focus. Game 2 now stands as more than the next challenge. It's the moment where one upset can grow into a finals run.